I feel like books are very connected to how I live with my life. So whatever situation that I've been in is closely connected or closely affected one another. With that being said, because of that fluctuations of emotions that I have, you would see like a whole range of books being read and talked about in this list. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Kira, if you're new here. I am so happy because I have seen not a lot, but few new subscribers from the last time I was here, which is 3 months ago. But also so sad because the last time I was here is 3 months ago. Last year I did the most favorite books that I've read from the previous year. So I'm going to share with you my most favorite books that I've read in the year of 2022. I love 2022 so far because I think and I feel like it was the year that I made a lot of leaps in my life, made a lot of going out from my comfort zone, doing a lot of big financial decisions in between me and my husband. We bought a car, finally enrolled our daughter to a play school. Nobody told me how expensive play school is. We also had COVID twice, once in March and once in December, which is the reason why I couldn't film this way earlier, because I had the long COVID effects in me. I feel like the cough especially was so hard to get over with. In summary, in 2022, I've managed to read 35 books out of 70 books that I targeted in 2022. This year, I lowered down my books that I want to read, my goal. This year, instead of 70, I want to read 45 books this year. So I don't want to rant any more longer than I need to, because I think this is going to be a long video. I believe that I have listed 10 best books out of the 35 books that I've read this year. Just like last year, I have honorable mentions this year. Those would be the books that I have not rated 5 stars in a way, but I feel like I thoroughly enjoy the book, but also have few moments where I may feel bored, but maybe like 95% of it I thoroughly enjoyed it. So it would be in this honorable mentions category. So the first book in the honorable mention category is this is Illuminate. This is actually the first sci-fi that I've managed to read. The first sci-fi that I actually attempted to read, I think is called I Live the Unseen, but I DNF'd it. In this book talks about these two corporations of fighting against each other, and how people on the earth are like being separated into two corporations, and how this couple who had broken up just the day before the attack has been made, and eventually they are separated from each other. It talks about this girl, Katie, who has quite an impressive skill in hacking, and eventually wanting to find out what had happened to her mother and also what had happened to her ex-boyfriend. They managed to get in touch with each other, but at the same time, they may have been some sort of tragedy happening towards her mother and also towards her ex-boyfriend, and she wanted to find that out. And it also involved the relationship or the way that the spaceship itself talking to her, observing her, doing all of this sort of hacking. So I find it very, very entertaining. I want to reach and to find the second volume of the series. I think this is a 3 volumes series, and I want to continue with this book. The second honorable mention that I have is this is How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids by Jancy Dine. Like I said before, I have certain inclinations toward reading certain books depending on where I am in my life at that point of time. So in my life at that point of time is of course not hating on my husband, but feeling so overwhelming with the duty and the responsibility that comes of being a lawyer, a mother, doing all the housemaking at the same time, all at the same time. We are also away from our immediate family. So it's really hard for us to find a time to take a break, especially, and eventually made us feel so overwhelmingly tired and exhausted and sometimes despising each other. And for that, I needed help. Of course, I have started therapy, which is so nice. And also, I've read this book. It really helped me organizing and compartmentalizing how to deal with your husband, how to lay down your expectation and also lower down your expectation when you have this familial relationship. If you have the same feeling, you may want to read this book. Really recommend it. Now, the third honorable mention is basically a TikTok or a YouTube book, and that is A Silent Patient by Alex Michaelidis. I'm not sure, but I've heard about this book basically all the time. I know that this has the plot twist, but I didn't know what was it. There were parts of this book that is a bit like irrelevant or a bit boring. It doesn't get full 5 stars, but overall I thoroughly enjoy this book. This book is basically about a psychiatrist who decided to try or attempted to make this one patient who allegedly or has shot her husband to death, I think 6 years ago. So he decided to go on a mission basically to be transferred to this almost dead mental health facility. He decided to move there with his wife to figure out what had happened to Alicia. This is basically a psychological thriller, a murder mystery. Now we can come in to the 10 of my most favorite books that I've read in the year of 2022, and it starts with number 10, Secrets of Divine Love by A. Helwa. I do not have the physical book with me right now because I lent it to my brother-in-law, but basically this is actually an Islamic motivational book, a devotional book, but I feel like even if you are from a different religion, you can approach this book with your God in mind, because this talks about your relationship with God over and over again. It talks about how you view yourself, how you view your relationship, how this relationship is very sacred, and it's very personal between you and your creator, and how whatever you are facing right now, all the hardship that you have right now, it's all temporary. I really like the way the author approached this book, in the sense that it starts with the issue or the question of faith first, talking about how you view yourself, how you view God, how this relationship is sacred between one another, and basically the all other worshipping parts that made you a servant, that made you in a religion. I really like this book, but sometimes I feel like it has a bit too much quotes from other poets. I understand the need for quotes from Al-Quran and also Al-Hadith, but the references to other poems are a bit too much in my opinion, but it's still nevertheless a very solid book, a very solid writing. I love it so much. It has helped me. You can open any page of that book and it would eventually help you in one way or another. So that's Secrets of Divine Love by A. Helwa. This is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Like I said, I have a very wide range of genre that I read, and this is basically another personal development book that I've read, and I choose this in the year of 2022. Don't think that this is jam-packed like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People did. If I want to recommend you a good self-development book, I would suggest you to read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, because that is like basically covers everything. But for Atomic Habits, it covers that. It covers habits or the things that you wanted to start to establish in your life. Unlike 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, this book really focuses on habits itself. Habits are those things that you would like to improve on. You would like to do more, or you would like to do less from your life. So it touches that. I feel like the most important point that I have obtained from this book is the fact that you only need to do or to have 1% improvement per day, because 1% improvement per day would eventually make you to have a 365% improvement for a year. And I think that's a very powerful way of looking at things, and that's about it. It's not overwhelming when you think it that way, when you put it that way. So that's the reason why I really love this book. Number 6 is this. This is Everything is Figureoutable by Mary Forleo. Reading these sorts of books make me feel like I have a new and fresh breath of life, a new perspective, a new set of motivations in me, instead of just keep on going, keep on surviving at all times. So I really like that. This is a book about basically that everything is figureoutable. It tells you how things that are in your control and you can figure it out, and how some people, or most of the people, actually keep on giving excuses, keep on trying to be perfect before actually achieving or before actually doing something. So I really like it. It's not cringy. I feel like I really have a lot of takeaway from this book. I really learned a lot from this book, and it's just what I need at that point of time. So I like it. I like it so much. And if you are thinking about getting a very light motivational book, then you may want to read this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is number. Coming in number 6 is a very dark book. A very traumatizing book, and I wish that somebody had told me about it. It's dark. It's dark, and that is Norwegian Wood by Haruki Murakami. I still haven't fully recovered from this book, actually, and I hated this book after I finished it, because it gave so much feeling and so much heaviness in my brain, that I felt so heavy. I felt so done. I kind of get shaken up after reading some parts of this book. So let me tell you now, I put a suicidal trigger warning in this so that you would not make the same mistake as I did, because it has a lot of suicide scenes. Not a lot, but I think 2 or 3 suicide scenes, and not to mention other suicidal thoughts from this character. Let me tell you what it is about. This is about Toru. Looking back, I think he was in the plane touching down at that point of time where he heard Norwegian Wood by Beatles playing out, and suddenly get reminisced back to his college days, where he remembered about his then girlfriend, I think, Naoko. I don't think they're in a relationship. Naoko was his best friend's girlfriend in high school, and his best friend died from suicide. They've gotten close in college, and they eventually start to have feelings for each other, but at the same time, Naoko is having or facing a lot of issues with herself. Something I don't like about this book is how Haruki Murakami writes about women. I feel like he's objectifying women too much. I feel like women have been reduced to just boobs and sex and just that, while it's not it. I'm a whole complex and complicated person. I don't like the way he objectifying women, at the same time trying to telling us about the struggles that Naoko is battling with. There are certain scenes in this book that I feel like it's unnecessary, or is unneeded, or it's a bit too shallow for Toru to do that. But despite all that, the reason why I put this book in this list is because how often I think about this book from time to time after I read this book. I think I read this book in January or in February last year, and up until now, I still have those scenes, those stories sit there, live rent-free in my head, in my mind. So I feel like it deserves to be in this list. I feel like Haruki Murakami is a kind of talented writer, minus all the sex and the objectification of women parts of it. I really like the way he managed his story, and I find a lot of also beautiful lines in here. It's up to you if you want to read this book. If you don't want to read this book, I cannot blame you. Just remember that I would give you a trigger warning before going on with this book. We are at number 5. I'm losing my voice. Number 5 is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Janet McCurdy. This is actually an autobiography of Janet McCurdy. If you do not know her, she's actually the co-star in iCarly, and also she starred in Sam and Cat, where she acted with Ariana Grande. I actually read this book via an audiobook, and I have basically jumped in the bandwagon and joined to read this book. Having a disturbing or depressing child star story is not very isolating, especially in Hollywood, but I really like the way how she had managed to brought in and encapsulate all of her complicated relationship with religion, with her very narcissistic mother, with food basically, and all of that in her autobiography. I feel like some people are being very judgmental towards the title of this book, because I gotta admit it sounds very clickbaity, but if you have read the whole book you would eventually understand, because if not for her mom's death, I don't think she would be able to start on her recovery journey, especially with bulimia. I feel like it was also the story of the very fact that she was a child when she had started to support her entire family. She starts the book with the POV of the 4 or 5 years old when she was that little. It's not from the POV of her 30-year-old something that she is now. You would really understand how would a child come into such a conclusion the way she was before. That is really, really refreshing. That is really, really good. It deserves all the hype, I think, for all that it's getting. Coming in number 4, this is from Rainer Maria Rilke, Letters to a Young Poet, and this is actually the compilations of letters from Rilke to one of his junior, I believe, who was in the school that he was before. Basically, this guy has been writing to Rilke asking about his opinions, especially for his works, because he's an aspiring poet, but also on life, on relationships, on career path, so on and so forth. The advice that Rilke gives is so astounding, so beautifully written, and to think that these are all correspondence. These are all letters written by Rilke. These are not the works basically intended for him to be published. These are just his thoughts being put on a paper to be sent to someone. Let me read you some of the excerpts from this book so you would know what I'm talking about. Rilke wrote, "Take pleasure in your growth, in which no one can accompany you, and be kind-hearted towards those you leave behind, and be assured and gentle with them, and do not plague with them with their doubts, or frighten them with your confidence or your joyfulness, which they cannot understand." When talk about life, Rilke said, "You are so young, all still lies ahead of you, and I should like to ask you, as best as I can, dear sir, to be patient towards all that is unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves like locked room, like books written in a foreign tongue. Do not now strive to uncover answers. They cannot be given you because you have not been able to live them. And what matters is to live everything. Leave the questions for now. Perhaps then you will gradually, without noticing it, leave your way into the answer one distant day in the future." Should I say more? Nope. Now let's go on to number 3. This is actually a middle grade / young adult fantasy, and I also do not have the physical book because I read this through an Audible, but I would want to have my hand on the physical book soon. This is The Blood Spell by C.J. Redwine. This is the most beautifully written young adult book that I have ever read. I especially the description of food, the description of the smell, of the feelings, of everything. Sometimes it's a bit too much, but I really love it. Like, it makes me so hungry just by listening to all those beautiful, immersive description of everything. This story is actually a loose retelling of Cinderella, which in my opinion, it's an even better story than Cinderella itself. This story concerns about a girl named Blue. Her mother has magic. Her mother may be a witch or something, and her father is just a normal guy working in a shop. They made all of this potion, all of this mixture of herbs to be sold to people. Blue has been living a very beautiful, a very mundane and special and quiet life with her father. Then something happened where eventually she has been put in the guardianship of one of the head family in the country, which is Dinah Chauveau, from the Chauveau quarter. She also is a close friend to the prince who's becoming the king of the country, and they were like enemies. This has like enemies to lovers kind of prose, so I really love it. I do not want to spoil this for you. Do you remember last year I read The Night Circus? It feels so magical, right? I feel this way about this book. Like I can imagine everything. I feel so deeply connected to the characters. I can feel Blue, but sometimes I really hate the fact that she's blindsided about certain things, certain events in her life. But overall, really enjoy this book. Really recommend it. Highly, highly recommend it. Number 2 was the book that I read because I read Norwegian Wood. Like I need to cleanse my brain palette from the darkness of Norwegian Wood. And so I decided to go with this. This is Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. This is one of children's classics. And I really, really like this one. I never thought I would love this, but I did, of course. This is, like I said, a children's classic concerning Anne, who is an orphan girl, live in an orphanage when suddenly there is this siblings looking for some orphans. So she had came to their house and then being confronted with the fact that it's not her that they actually want. They initially asked for a boy to help them in the farm, but instead were given Anne. And it was at first really, really heartbreaking because she was so excited in starting a new life in this farmhouse, but eventually learning that she's not supposed to be there in the first place. But then eventually they agreed to accept her and let her live with them. If you watch the series, you might find Anne as a very annoying character, but when you read the book, she's not so much annoying, but I think she's a bit very easily distracted kind of girl. I then read somewhere, I think, that Anne is actually the embodiment of ADHD in kids. But nevertheless, I really like the adventure that she has in this book. Her imagination is so immense. Like she could make something out of anything. And I feel like I was like that before. I was that way when I was 6, when I was 7, like singing in my grandparents' garage, thinking that it was a big stage for me. And it's basically that. And it's an embodiment of imagination in a girl because she has a lot of things. She has a lot of imaginations. And also, I really love the writing of this book. It's phenomenal. It's easy to follow. It's easy to breeze through, but also it's so funny. It's so heartwarming. It's so cozy, and it's so beautiful at the same time. And basically felt like Anne with an E is just a very mundane name. So she wants something, a character to her name. So she would emphasize that her name, Anne, should be spelled with an E. And is also a very dramatic girl. Let me read you one thing that she has said. And Mr. Phillips spelled my name without an E too. The iron has entered my soul, Diana. I chuckled and giggled a lot while reading this book, and that's why I really love this book, and I'm so glad that I read this book last year. If you have been feeling down lately and you want something to feel, something to pick you up, I really, really I recommend you to read this book. And coming to the best book that I've read in 2022, and possibly the best book that I've read in my entire life, in my entire 27 years of living, and I would not take it back, is this. This is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I read this book because I joined Read Along with Emma from the channel Emmy, if you follow her. But oh my goodness, this book has won Nobel Prize, and it's a no-brainer. Before I begin, I would like to put on the disclaimer that, of course, this has trigger warning. You should look it up. But this is basically a multi-generational story about Buendia family. The first father, Jose Arcadio Buendia, the head of the Buendia family, has founded this town, named Macondo. And I think from the first 5 pages, you would know that this is not an ordinary feat. This is not an ordinary book for you to read. You would eventually being sucked in just immediately, and you're like, what is this? Because it really felt that way. It really felt like this book is this one long breath that you are taking. Like the moment I start this book, it's like me taking in the breath, and right after I finish this book, it's like I exhale the very long breath that I've been taking. This concerns about the multi-generational story of Jose Arcadio Buendia's family. This has a sprinkle of magics in it. It's not too much, it's not too prevalent, but it's enough for you to think about certain things that has been presented in this book. You can never put it into words about how immersive these books feel, how powerful each sentence can be, how each sentence is not left unintended or without purpose. It talks about the 100 years of generation of Buendia's family, and you don't feel like you missed important parts of them. You don't feel like the author doesn't give the characters any more chance that it should or anything. It feels so sufficient. And the way, the propensity of each character, especially Jose Arcadio, making the mistakes, the same mistakes over and over again. The men in this family having or involving in the same incestuous relationship over and over again. And the women or the female in the family making the same mistakes over and over again. This town, this Macondo town, is also surrounded or is in a swamp. And I feel like this mirrored the fact that all of these people in this town are living very still. It's really amazing. I mean, you can tell. I tag it according to the things that I want to examine, the things that I want to mark. Green is for all magical realism points in this book. Blue is for each introduction of character. Red is for beautiful things that have been said in this book. Have you even come across the meme where someone asks, what's your favorite part of that book? The vibes. I love the vibes. That's me. I cannot tell you how much I love this book. I cannot tell you how this book has opens up, has crumbled upon me, how the characters feel so far but yet so close to you, how each scenes have so many things happening, has keep on coming back 50 years ago, and then they brought it forward to the third generation, and then they brought it backward to the first generation of them, because there are 7 generations in here. So it feels so suffocating but so immersive at the same time. That's all that I could say about this book. I love that I understand now for the very title of 100 Years of Solitude, because it's literally 100 Years of Solitude. I cannot give this book any justice with the very limited vocabulary, limited comprehension that I have, especially in an examination of a lot of things. But I would just tell you, please read this book. You would have one hell of an experience in your life, and that's about it. I would also hope that I would give you more videos this year. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I will see you in my next video. Bye bye. Daddy, babe, you're snoring. Sayang, what's wrong?